This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni. What are we going to do?
We have another wonderful, wonderful conversation teed up here. And it was one of those things that, as we've discussed, are obvious to me. And it's then when you bring it up, it's obvious that it's not obvious to everybody.
Yeah. It's not.
Yeah. And your question is about wealth, prosperity, and abundance.
Yeah, the difference. And you mentioned, I think, in the introduction or while you were talking, they are not synonymous.
Right.
But
people
they're used,
sometimes think that, some people treat them as though they're synonyms.
And the reason I'm bringing it to the podcast right now, rather than to just, okay, I'll check it out on Google or whatever. If it's not clear, it could very well be the reason why you're not getting what you want, because you're asking for the wrong thing unaware.
There you go. So the 3 terms are wealth, prosperity, and abundance. And there are lots of times where I'll be working with somebody and they want me to pray for abundance. And I will sit patiently while they talk about what it is that they want. And then I will gently point out that they do not want me to pray for abundance. And the reason is that abundance is an aspect of the infinite. It's like praying for God to be God, praying for the divine to be divine. It is completely, it's built in, and it's redundant, and it's irrelevant. This is an infinitely abundant nature, a universe. Its nature is abundance. Mm-hmm. Okay? There's one divine creative power. Go back to the creation story. I love that one. And we'll use the Big Bang because the scientists think it took longer. So we can describe the same thing that happened when the infinite said, let there be light. So there's this one singularity, possibly dense, and it starts exploding. And over time, that exploding mass of energy starts forming itself into matter. And then the matter starts forming itself into different sorts of matter. And all of the elements in the periodic table get formed through a series of nuclear and chemical reactions until finally we have all of the different particles that exist now, which then form together to make stars and planets and stuff. And then evolution happens and it turns into life, and that turns into people, and that turns into 401k plans and homeowners associations. The infinite said, let there be HOAs. So, and everything that exists is that one expressed in a different form. All the energy, all the matter that exists anywhere in the universe has been there since the beginning of time. We can, as the scientists have pointed out, we can change energy into matter and matter into energy, but we can't get rid of either of them. We can just change it. So all of that energy is now showing up as matter, is showing up as energy, is showing up as everything in the world around us. That's infinite abundance. Okay, it means that there's no limit to it. It's like that's huge and keeps on going and going and going. Praying for abundance in that light is absurd. The nature of the universe is abundance. The thought that the infinite creative power that created everything doesn't have enough material to make another planet. Oh, I wish I could do one more star, one more galaxy, but I just don't have. No, it's not the way it works. Supernovas and celestial collisions and all the rest of that keeps going on, and new matter, new stars get born out of the process. Abundance is not an issue. So we can't pray for abundance. It's like praying for there to be the outer space. It's like he's going to be there whether you pray or not.
Well, can we? I'm thinking about this before I ask because this could send us off to the side, and I want to get to the rest.
No, we wouldn't want to get distracted.
Okay. So, okay. So can we pray from the abundance, so to speak?
Absolutely. Oh, you teed that one up beautifully. So abundance is an aspect of the infinite. That's a characteristic of the divine. That's God itself. God is abundant.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to pray for abundance, but I have an experience of how much of that abundance is available to me, and that shows up as wealth and prosperity.
And say that again. Say it again.
How it shows up in my experience. It's an infinitely abundant universe, and there might be an experience that I'm having where I don't have quite enough of whatever it is that I would prefer to have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as we close in on the first of the month, is there enough in my bank account to cover the mortgage? As I am looking at the at the holiday table with the family coming over, is there going to be enough to feed everybody?
Mm-hmm.
So it's an infinitely abundant universe. It's just possible that the turkey or whatever the other ingredients are still in the supply chain. They're down at the store rather than at my house. So I do not have that experience of enoughness right now, of prosperity. There's plenty in the universe, but it's not here at this particular time. And I wish that there was more in my bank account right now because the credit cards are due. And, you know, it's the same thing in all the areas of our life. Prosperity is the experience, the personal experience of that abundance.
Okay.
So if I have something that's missing in my life, I can pray for that. I can pray for prosperity in that area, for the enoughness for myself. And it doesn't change the inherent nature of the universe. And the way that I like to describe it is this is not a supply issue. This is a distribution issue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I get it. Okay.
So that's the difference between abundance and prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
And when people use them interchangeably, you can just shake your head and go, no, one of those matters and one of those you're never going to change.
Okay. So, okay. I get it. So it's all right. So then I am praying. I understand clearly what I asked you, praying from the abundance. But when there's a discrepancy in the prosperity that shows up or that is present in your life, then the problem isn't with the abundance, nor necessarily what is there, but there's something in between. Perhaps, are you saying, that prohibits the flow of the abundance into your life?
The experience of there being a disconnect between the amount of resource that would be comfortable in my life and the amount that's actually available right now in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that you've had the experience, and the term used to be house poor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, somebody goes and gets a fabulous house and they need to decorate it, but they don't have enough money to quite get it the way that they want it to be. And oh, by the way, we're spending all of our time and all of our money and all of our attention on fixing up the house. And now we never go to the ball game because there's just not enough money to go out and buy a ticket or even the time to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So the experience that we're having is we've made a choice in one direction. So we've got that prosperity in one area, but that's taken it away in a different area.
Mm-hmm.
So that feeling of prosperity is having enough to have the comfortable house and have the stuff that we like, and also the latitude and the freedom to be able to go to the theater or to invite friends over for a meal or go out to a restaurant, take a vacation, or do something in addition to the things that we are already doing.
Mm-hmm.
That initial decision to go and buy the house is a commitment of how we're going to allocate resources. And then what happens after that is, oh, well, now there's a rebalancing that gets to happen. And that's the experience that we have of prosperity. And I'm sure you know lots of people who were house poor at some point in the past, and then they got over it. And now either their house is paid for, or they've gotten additional income, or something's happened, so they're comfortably in the house and they go on vacation. Same house.
So the prayer actually is kind of set, the stage for it is set with the decision that it was made in the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, to kind of, this is a crazy question. Okay, so
Go for it. I love crazy questions.
so you should, I mean, forget the word should, but should, in terms of budgeting, you make the decision, what is this house going to require, right? Am I going to be house poor with this house? But I really, really want it, so I'll get it because I can. And then I'll pray myself out of house poor. I'll pray that I will get more. Speak on that.
We never know what's going to happen next. I mean, there were a bunch of people who, before the housing bubble burst in 2008, got themselves a very nice, comfortable house. And there was every reason to believe that they would do just fine in that house, and they would grow into it, and they would be able to sell it at a profit and move into a different house, and the market would continue going up, and everybody was going to be happy, and there's prosperity for all. And then that didn't happen. And there were a bunch of people who were saddled with houses that suddenly were not worth what they paid for them. And they were spending all of their income to stay in a house that was never going to get paid off. And it all turned upside down, and it was a huge loss of prosperity. P.S. Observation on abundance, the houses are still there. They just belong to other people now.
Yeah. So then it's up to us to be intelligent about our choices. Yes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
To be pragmatic and practical and intentional about our choices. And we don't need to figure it out all on our own, because, see back to part number 1 about abundance, the infinite nature of the universe. All the intelligence that exists anywhere is the divine intelligence expressed individually. So if there's something for me to know, I can open up and invite the infinite to make a suggestion to me. And you've had the experience that somebody offers you a job and it's got all the right specifications and this should be perfect for me. And something says, don't do it.
Right.
Don't do it. Don't do it. And then one of two things happens. You tell the still small voice to shut up and you take the job and it's awful. Or you say, I'm not doing this now. And suddenly a fabulous offer shows up almost instantaneously that's 10 times as good as you could have imagined. And you're not already committed to something else. We've all had that experience. Also second guessing ourselves. Well, I don't think that this could possibly be right for me. This seems like it's all good, but I'm figuring it out now. So I can have exactly the same thing, but work from home. And we say no. And 6 months later, we're still looking for a job. Allowing the infinite to make the suggestion and then listening to it and following the guidance can be huge.
And I'm an advocate of, just be slow. Take your time. It's very hard. It's very difficult when you want something and maybe all around you, you see it happening for other people. It doesn't even have to be happening for a whole lot of other people. You just see it like a couple of times and I can do this. And I think, and I'm going to say it just the way that I'm able to say it, the only way I know to say it, to me, the universe works in order. It doesn't do crazy. I mean, there's magical moments, I think, surely.
It's not capricious. It's not like it like entices you into one thing and then it pulls the rug out from under you.
Yeah.
It's pretty consistent.
It's pretty consistent. So I think about doing, let's say this. I have big dreams. I don't know how to get there, and I know that it's going to require this, this, and this. Beyond which I can figure out how to do myself or get myself or whatever. And so I sit and I say, okay, I know this idea is divine. I start with that because, I'm asking, I do this automatically. So I'm trying to take it step by step. So is this a divine idea? And I wait for the intuition and all of that business to come. Then if it is, and I can't see the way, I just assume that this is God's idea. My job is to get prepared for it and watch. Then that's when I say, watch the magic happen. But
Right.
that takes a bit. I really don't expect people to bite on that. Even, in making the transition, as the other person that wrote to you talked about, making the transition from one side of the street to the other, that transition is a lot, because you have to understand what you're letting go of and what you're replacing it with, and being okay with that. So, and then building your faith, I guess, around that. That's why I said it's hard work. It doesn't just, you think it's easy.
I don't think it's easy. I think it's simple.
Well,
it's definitely not easy.
And I don't even know what does simple mean. There's only 10 steps, or it's 3 steps instead of 10. I don't know. What does that mean?
Let's take a break, and we'll come and talk about what we mean by simple. And I thought wealth, prosperity, and abundance was going to be enough. Wow.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marcione's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcione. Now listen, we got to make sure we stay on this prosperity abundance, even though I might have shifted us out for a minute.
Okay.
All right, go ahead. We got to get back.
You reestablish the conversations, and I will head in the direction you want to go in.
Okay. All right. So I can't do that. What are we? I was following. I was following the pattern that we were, the road that we were going in. We'll get back. Go ahead.
We're talking about wealth, prosperity, and abundance. And what we've identified is that abundance is an aspect of the infinite. That's just the nature of the universe. We can't pray for abundance any more than we can pray for there to be a sun in the sky. There's going to be a sun. It's like we're not in control of that. And it's never going to go away. Prosperity is our personal experience of enoughness in whatever aspect of that abundance we're looking for. And we've been talking about that in terms of finances. Enough money to pay the rent, enough resource to be able to go on vacation, enough to go around and balance the books. Prosperity actually applies to all the areas of our lives. Part of it is financial. Another part of it is about health. You get somebody who's got tons and tons of money, but they're ill and on the verge of dying. They don't care about the money anymore. Yeah, it buys them good doctors, but the reason that they want to buy the doctors and hire the doctors is so they get the health back. Mm-hmm. So, and that has to do with wellness or illness. It has to do with our physical comfort and our ability to move around. You start, walking through the park and everything is going great. It's a beautiful, gorgeous day and it's wonderful and the people are great. And you get a pebble in your shoe. None of that is on your mind other than the pebble. So prosperity is about being in the flow and having the supply of whatever it is around us. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with love. Somebody's got tons and tons of money, but no friends and no romance, and they're not feeling any love in their life. The money becomes much, much less consequential. That's where the phrase "money can't buy happiness" comes from. Mm-hmm. We can make a nice down payment, okay, keep us entertained while we're looking for the happiness or the love. The other one is the creativity, the way that we share our gifts with the world. If we're sitting there feeling backed up and stymied and not able to do anything valuable, then having all the money winds up being pretty empty. Mm-hmm. And we can do empty things with the money. Yes, it is much more entertaining to feel empty with a lot of money than to feel empty without any money.
Mm-hmm.
But the answer is not money. The experience, one of the exercises that I do in class is I say, who wants to be rich? And everybody's hand goes up.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, who wants to be happy? And everybody's hand goes up. I said, if you could be rich or happy, which would you choose? And of course, being a New Thought, they say, why do I have to choose? I can have it all. And I said, for this exercise, you have to choose. And they all choose happiness. Because if you can be happy without money, or if you can be rich without being happy, I mean, who'd buy unhappiness?
Right.
So that's where the prosperity comes in. The prosperity is having enough of whatever it is that's going to be uplifting and fulfilling us.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to spend some time on that. I mean, not necessarily in this podcast, but in making that a part of the understanding of this journey, to take your time and understand what you're asking for. The prosperity isn't just one thing, but what flavor of prosperity are you looking for right now? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean, I don't think it negates anything else, but you use the word enoughness. And I think that's really a sobering idea or sobering thought. What is enoughness? Like, what do I need right now to make me feel okay? And it doesn't mean that more won't come. It doesn't mean that. To me, it doesn't mean that. If you want $1 million, is it okay that it comes 250,000 at a time? It's enoughness, and that gives us time for gratitude. On the journey, as we have enough, we are grateful for enough, and then there's always going to be enough.
Right.
Yeah.
And it brings in notions of balance as well. So there's, somebody who's living in an apartment where they're paying $1,000 a month rent, and it's fine, and they got well more than enough of an income to support that, and they got some money put in the bank, and so they get themselves a house with a mortgage that's $5,000 a month, and suddenly it's them and their house and their income and their savings, and the balance has shifted. Because, it's a nicer house, but now there's something else that needs attention, which is the income or the other expenses or something different. And you can't point to any of that and say it's bad.
Right.
It's all good in its own way, in balance. There are people who have annual incomes and annual expenses that are far lower than mine. And there are people who have annual income and expenses that are way, way higher than mine. And the important part is not how much the annual budget is, but it's about having the expenses and the available resource be in balance, because otherwise we feel the imbalance, and that's what attracts our attention.
It's like, it's practical living. As I said that, I had a flashback of something a phrase that I used that did not get me very much favor, but I had just...
Let me hear it.
It used to be. I used to get myself in trouble a lot. But I read this book by Watchman Nee, who can be very leaning toward fundamentals in a way sometimes. But he was freer than I had been. So I read into this book, and I'm reading, and I liked it because I kept thinking there is practical Christian living. There's a way that life works. And if you get in the flow of, because you're not going to fix it to work your way. So figure out how it works. And it doesn't mean you can't get what you want. You just have to use this set of rules, sort of philosophy. I'll say that way. So use it that way. And so I think that practicality is one of those things that maybe has to be clearly understood, but it's right there. You don't go from enough to way over abundance into way more than enough than you'll ever need, right? Because you don't have Emmett Fox, you don't have the mental equivalent to handle it. So if you get it, you're not going to get, you're not going to be able to keep it. So I think we grow, like we can get more as we grow. Is that fair to say?
Oh,
yeah. And to me, the intention is the growth, so that there are certainly things I want, but I want to grow so that, one, I can recognize the way to it. It's just it's practical.
We've all heard stories about people who won the lotto jackpot, and their lives went to hell, and within 5 years they were declaring bankruptcy and didn't have two nickels to rub together. And what happens with a lotto jackpot in many, many, many cases is that the available resource way outgrows the consciousness of the person who is in possession of it. And that there's a huge wake-up call there. There's a huge learning curve, and there's a lot of transformation that needs to happen. Somebody's going through their everyday life, and they got their buddies down at the bar, and they're hanging around, and everything is fine, and suddenly they've got $500 million. And then their friends know that they have $500 million, and we're going to go down to the same bar and hang out with the same people. And why don't you pick up the check? Because you got $500 million, and there's no reason not to. So I do. And then they come down to the bar, and they're there more often, and they expect me to be there all the time because now I'm the guy who's buying them the beers. And the relationship changed, and suddenly I don't have what I used to have. And it's like, now what? Do I keep on buying the affection of my former friends? Do I let them go and have to find out how do I live as a multimillionaire? It changes. Everything changes. So, and it's not like the money just fixed it all. It just changed it all.
It changes, and I'm saying, do your homework and see what's going to happen if I get this, right? So don't laugh, but you can laugh anyway. When I thought about what I wanted,
I don't know what it is yet. I'm already laughing.
When I thought about a certain change that I wanted, I said, okay, what's this going to cost me? And I'm not talking about dollars and cents. What is this going to cost me? So number one, if I get this amount of money, I am not financially astute enough to know how to work it. So I got to get the wealth advisor on speed dial because I want the universe to understand that I understand my limitations and I have planned for them and so forth. So I do everything that way. I don't know if it really makes sense, but I always think about, all right, what is this going to mean after? Let me get ready for it because I really think it's a good idea. However, sometimes in looking at what it's going to cost me, I'm thinking, nah, I don't think so. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Well, there's a huge difference between the consciousness of getting something and the consciousness of having something.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly what you're talking about. I mean, there are people who I've talked to. It's like, oh, I so much want to be in a long-term relationship. I want to have a spouse. I want to have somebody to spend my life with. And all the rest of those things. And it's a really happy sounding story. And I say, is there room for somebody else's clothes in your dresser? Do you have room for somebody else's stuff in your living room? Is there time in your schedule to spend all of your time with somebody else? And I'm like, well, okay. You better make room because when that wonderful person shows up, there's going to be some commitment.
Well, there's going to be some commitment, but listen, you got to think about what does this mean with your mental, your headspace, your peace space. Is that important to you? What about, do you need someone to agree with you? Just flat out, let's just be real. Do you have to have your way? Or, are you, I mean, that's the real, you brought this up and I started thinking about how I used to do marriage counseling. And I thought it was incredibly practical because I hated marriage counseling. People they'll say yes to anything just to get past this part so they can get to the, finish all of the stuff that the fun stuff in planning the wedding. But I got to do this because this preacher or whatever will not do the ceremony without it. Right. So I'll do this. Now, you don't have very much of their attention or commitment at that point. But the truth of the matter is when you get married or when you get into a relationship of any kind, it doesn't matter what the configuration is. It's who are you and do you have to be right? Are you willing to be wrong? Are you willing to share? Are you willing to, it's a lot. And I use that example to say that before you ask for anything, take a minute to think about what it's going to cost you. And you may want to pay, but listen, be honest. And I'll tell you, sometimes I've said, look, I'll pay because I really want it. Yeah, I paid. I'm thinking, I should have left that crap alone. But then trust your intuition and your gut that this is not the way. You're not going to like this because this is going to cause a disruption that is not going to make you happy. Then you trust. Trust. Yep. So I go back to my word. It takes a lot. We were supposed to talk about it doesn't take a lot. It's simple versus
it's simple but not easy.
Yeah.
Let's take a break, and when we continue, we will have a prayer on the consciousness of prosperity. It's Reverend Bill letting you know that the Practical Prayer for Real Results class is now available on demand. That's right, you can take it at your own pace, anytime you want. All of the information is at BeTheLight.com. That's B-the-light.com. You know where to find that stuff. The class is 5 lessons, broken down into 18 modules, and you can take them at whatever pace is comfortable for you. As you work through the process, it starts out with the theory, goes into the practice, there are experiential activities and exercises, and at the end of the program, you will wind up with an understanding of how practical prayer works, and a practical prayer for yourself that will work to create transformation in your life. And as you know, it works for everything. Take a look at the class online at BeTheLight.com. There's a sample lesson so you can see how the class is going to work for you and then dive in. The great news is it's on sale now. You can register and save $20 off of the regular price. I'm looking forward to seeing you in class.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni. Bingo. There we go.
Fascinating conversation that we've been having. We're talking about wealth and prosperity and abundance. And as I promised, a prayer on the consciousness of prosperity. And we were talking about before is that there is prosperity, which is our experience of abundance. And then there is our ability to embody whatever that prosperity is that we're looking for. Do I have the room in my life for a loving relationship? Do I have the belief in my consciousness that I can be healthy or vital or move around easily? Do I have the consciousness of being a friend and having a friend? Is the good that I'm seeking something that is realistic for me? So that's the prayer today. The prayer today is that consciousness of prosperity, about making the room in our own consciousness to be experiencing that newness, that goodness, that uplift, that balance, that harmony that we're seeking. And prosperity shows up in all different areas of our lives. It's the big 5, as I call them, which are health, wealth, love, work, and spirit. Health is our experience of vitality and comfort, our physical being, and embodying all of that goodness and comfort without having things that are distracting or taking away from that. Wealth is about our finances, our financial prosperity, and it's not about having a lot of money. It's about having an adequate supply so that that's not the distraction for us. The same way that if we're not healthy, that's what has our attention. And being healthy just lets us go on and do the fun stuff that we want to do anyway. Love is about the relationships that we have. Do I have the friendship? Do I have the committed romance, whatever I am seeking in my life? Do I have the consciousness of that so that I can open up and experience that? And work is not about the job that we do. It's the way that we share those unique gifts that we have. Because that's the stuff that resonates. It's creativity, it's sharing, it's art, it's whatever beauty we're bringing into the world through our gifts. And sometimes it's by making a sculpture, and people call it creativity. And sometimes it's by doing a job and doing it well and bringing some uplift into the world through that. So the prayer today is the consciousness of prosperity, about being in that place of balance. And so what we get to do is turn our awareness away from the specifics and the circumstance and open to the awareness of that infinite power and presence, that one divine love that shares itself as and through and in all of its creation. Everything is that divine love expressed in its own way. Everything is that divine love expressed in an individual and particular way. That includes me, That includes everyone within the sound of my voice. We are each expressions of the infinite. We are each heir to the goodness, the richness, the prosperity, the abundance that lives everywhere in the universe. It is all available to us. And as we open ourselves to that, as we allow that consciousness to expand, this goodness could be possible for me. This could be okay for me. As we put down whatever's not serving us, as we let go of anything that might be blocking that good from showing up in our lives, as we open to it, as we engage in the process, and we take whatever steps we're guided to take to participate in that creativity. We want to grow a plant. We can't just sit and whine and want a plant. We may have to go out and set up the garden and do some weeding and dig and get muddy and be involved in a planting and a watering and a caretaking process, and then we get the plant. Do we have that consciousness? Are we doing that part which is ours? And knowing that each one of us is guided to take exactly those perfect steps to bring that newness about, to allow that good to unfold, we open to it, we participate in it, we allow it, and that infinite creative power creates it, bringing that goodness to each of us in our own way. And I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the good that's showing up. I'm grateful for the willingness of each one to play a part. And I'm grateful to be able to speak this word of intention and release it now into that creative law that creates everything. And to know it is now creating this. This goodness is underway now. And so I let it be. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com,
be-the-light.com,
where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit,
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.